Okay, the meeting is underway. The video is running. This is the Community Preservation Act Committee. The first thing on the agenda is the election of officers, as this is a new term. I'm happy to continue as your chair, but you certainly can nominate anybody who wants this job. I would only offer that I have had perfect attendance. And I've gotten stars from the nuns for that in the past.
It's amazing.
So,
Do you need to be nominated?
we need to vote on me being chair. Yes.
I'll make a motion. Maintain Riss our chair. Shirley Slater.
What if I said Jessica Allen?
Absolutely not.
There's always vice.
Any further nominations?
Absolutely not.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now,
You didn't ask for all this.
okay. Secondly, we do need a vice chair, because although I've had good attendance, I certainly want to have someone to be able to call on this, and I need a volunteer. Now, the chances of you having to take over a meeting, yeah, they may be slim, because now that I'm retired, I like doing this, so I'll be here, but on the other hand, if I can't make it, somebody has to take over the meeting. So, anybody want to volunteer?
Why me?
No, she's a new member, I'm not gonna have
Because you're great, you're used to like
She's the only
doing
woman at the
meetings and
table.
stuff.
I
And we know that your attendance is going to be.
How about you, Scott? You went.
Greg's been here a long time. Greg's been here a long time, and he.
Yeah,
My
but
attendance is spotty.
Deerfield Academy tends to keep them away from us.
Spotty. That's true.
We should run that damn academy out of the state, but that's...
Whatever you are. I do it because I think that it won't ever actually happen. So.
I nominate Scott Kavanaugh as vice chair.
Second.
Okay, Jessica, second. Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Is there a pay raise?
Actually,
You get double now?
1,000%.
All right. We need to approve the minutes of October 17th because we couldn't the last time since most of us are here. Does anybody remember? I think we only had 4 members who were here on October 17th. So can I have them?
Dan, John, Scott, Harry, and Craig.
Dan, Scott, Harry.
And Craig. And John.
How many is that? 6?
There were 6.
So we need 5. So we can vote on it because Ed's not here, but everybody else is. So me, what'd you say? Harry? Ed, S.
Ed, Craig, Scott, and John.
Okay, so me, Harry, Greg, Scott, and John need to vote on this. I move that we approve the October 17th minutes. Those here, all in favor? Aye. Abstaining? No, you were here.
You were here late. I missed half the meeting.
You were here.
Hey! Actually.
Ed was here the whole meeting.
Ed, say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Minutes approved. You're not gonna sit down? Hey, this is the first time in a long time I've had 9 members at my meeting. It's great.
Yeah.
He's gonna sit down, he's just kidding. Next thing on the agenda is public speak. I assume this is the City Space Board and you're gonna speak later.
We were asked to come, we're waiting for Burns.
Well, I told her it'd be a little later, but, okay.
She didn't tell me.
I didn't tell her to invite the entire board, but I'm happy you're here.
We're a couple of members short.
So you're not public necessarily, and there's no other public here, so we'll continue. City officials, correspondence, communications. Oh, you don't have anything? All I want to say is we did get the 20 million. I don't know if you guys get the CPA Stewart's newsletter. We got the 20 million from the state surplus, so we will be getting a bump in our budget, which is cool. We'll take the money. Account balances and open projects. I always wonder about older account balances that still have a lot of money in, and I know I keep account balances that go back even before Jess's time. Mandan Rail Trail, were you here in 2009? That still has 52% of the CPA money left, and we have 81% housing for a reasonable accommodation. I know that they're ongoing, and Jamie keeps saying that they're going to be used, but
Is it for the survey work?
It's for the survey work, and I haven't talked to Lee about it in a year and a half, so.
I would like us to do a full-blown, anything that's 217 and later. Well, the old town hall second floor design, there's some money in their bank, but that's going to stay there for extra work, I imagine.
I think the first-time home buyer stuff, that's through Valley, and, really that's dependent on clients being able to still, it's fun.
Yeah,
It's still 6%.
Yeah, that's only 6%. I'm looking at housing authority reasonable accommodation is 81% left in the bank. So if we can find out about those, I don't necessarily need anything from.
The Housing Authority, the last project in June, I got the invoice for two accessory projects, and they've been slowly using it, which is the point of the original appropriation.
So it's a slow process.
Was for them to have that funding available and when they
Okay.
did it. It sort of depended on when they get their.
So it must have been an open-ended contract. Okay.
We could have them, things like, that longer.
Or if you could just make a call and say.
The italicized ones are substantially complete. And those will be coming on the list as the final payments get done and the accounts get this back out.
Okay. Okay, so I'm okay with the rest of them. Anybody else have questions on the account balances? So moving on, historic commission, historic building inventory. Michael, you're up. Process will be for you to introduce this tonight, and we will take it under advisement, maybe give a sense of what our agreement will be in the next meeting. We'll vote on it. That's our new rules, which are well done, by the way. So, go ahead, Michael.
All right, basically, the historical commission, we're looking for a total of $25,000. We're applying for a grant from Mass Historical Commission. And what we want to do is do inventories and survey the Main Street. We already have a historic district there, the Main Street Extension area. And we want to look at that area and see if we can expand it. The grant itself is will be reimbursed 50% of that, so it'll be like $12,500. We cover that at the conclusion of the grant, so we have to get the full amount, $25,000 up front. The timeline on it would be July 2020 to the end of 2021. As far as the details,
To the end of when?
2021, end of June.
Okay. June 2021. Good. So basically a year.
Yeah. Like I said, we wouldn't get the money back until the project has been completed satisfactorily.
From the state.
Yeah. I did send you some paperwork that kind of give you an outline of the project.
Yes, it's well done, thank you.
We do have some help from Pioneer Valley Planning. So basically, yeah, the project will be applying for the grant, it's due by February 10th. They will decide on the, who to award the grants to on March 11th. It'll be nice to have the funds, at least working on getting them around that time. I don't know, your timeline, next meeting will be February.
We will probably vote on this in February.
Yep.
Then it goes to the city council. First meeting in March, maybe, if the paperwork is ready. And then that goes to finance committee, then it gets approved possibly by the second meeting in March. So you'll have funding in place in either the first or second meeting of the council in April. And is that sufficient time for this grant?
I believe so. I mean, you know, like I said, we need to spend the money up front anyways. So, and the only other caveat is if we don't get the grant, then the money will come back to CPA anyways. Or we come back from the discussion.
So, the grant is, if I understand this right, the grant is leveraged by our CPA funds in the sense that they won't give the grant until they see local funds in place, or at least approved. Is that right? So they want the funds in place before the application, but will we get notice of the grant being approved before you have to start doing the project and spend money?
Yes.
Do you need something in your grant application that shows it maybe from the city funds?
Yeah, I believe it was.
So,
That'll all be done once the city council votes it.
I'm asking when the grant is submitted in February, if you needed some sort of documentation that shows.
Oh, it has to be submitted in
That's what
grant?
I'm asking.
I missed that. It has to be done in February?
Grants due February, and then they would find out the awards in March.
Is it February, what date in February?
February 10th.
Well, obviously, I don't think the city council will say no, but we can't say you guarantee the money until the city council says yes. So I guess what I'm asking is, can you talk to the grant people and say,
Yeah.
I mean, will they delay working on this until you get the money? I mean, the project could be delayed a month or two into July or August if you have to wait a little longer, but is that gonna work?
I believe that. I mean, I'm not certain as far as the application process, if it has to absolutely be approved at that point. I think it has to be,
In the
or at
works.
least in the works.
Okay.
All right, well, I think by the next meeting, which is after that grant application, if you can find out
Yep.
if there's any problem with the timing of all this.
Yep.
I mean, if necessary, is there another date that you can do the application? If you have to have the funding in place, can you do an application in April? I mean, after the funding's in place.
Don't believe so.
Okay, well, I guess it's up to you to find it, because obviously, well, I'm gonna say that if, this is my opinion, we could fund the whole thing if they don't do the grant. But that would be up to the committee. Right now, we're going to look at the application as pending approval of the grant. That's what you've asked for.
Right.
If the grant is not allowed, or if the timing doesn't work for you, you want to wait a year until you can go in again, or maybe the committee can consider it 100%. We don't like doing that.
I would like, it would be nice if we could consider the 100%, or we could, even start working with the 50% reapply next year.
Okay, tell me a little more about this inventory and how it will help with future needs of the cities. I'm assuming you have an inventory of historic building, architecture, et cetera, in that area.
Right.
What is that? Is that because then if someone needs something renovated, you have a historic building, they're on the inventory, it helps them for grant funding?
It can help for grant funding or tax purposes. Good Keene's actually across the street. Actually was placed on the National Register of Historic Places because they were getting tax credits as they were going along. So this would kind of tie into that. We take a better look at this downtown area and expand it out. It also, it helps with property values. And actually, another thing is, a lot of times we get these demo requests that come up, out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you realize you have a resource there and we know nothing about it. So this would actually help us get some background on exactly what's out there, what we would like to see preserved, and what we don't care as much about.
That sounds important, I mean, in the sense that if somebody wants to tear down a building that has some history to it, then you'll get involved because it's on the historic inventory. And I think we've done other inventory, right, in other areas previously, in the past. So.
The last inventories were done, I believe, in the mid-90s, maybe. So it's been a while. So I think we're overdue to actually doing something. This is a good way to start, especially if we can get 50% of the
Any other questions from the committee? What are you looking at me for? I put you on the committee to stay quiet, which was very difficult to
You
do.
I would stay quiet. So just a couple of questions. So one, the amount that you're requesting for the 25,000 doesn't match the amount that's the 24 listed on the letter of intent. So is there?
Yeah,
So is there 1,000 for like
we get to do a
contingency?
pre-application,
Okay.
and the pay-up price is and we can get up to about 50 bags.
Do you have to redo this application? Good catch, Jeff. Because it says
We did a
24.
pre-application, we were accepted to apply for the grants.
So they noted in the letter that it's $500 more than.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember that now.
They have a funding formula that's $50,000 is approximately 100 resources. So all of their funding given, they wanted to just fund the thing rather than trying to figure out how to do the extra $1,000.
Okay. The second question I had to do with the area in Williston, and I just want to make sure that the folks at Williston are aware the inventory is happening and they've been informed and they're on board. And
Pre-application actually mentioned Williston, but the application we'll be submitting in February is going to exclude the campus itself.
okay.
Probably just some of the outbuildings will be included.
Okay.
That are owned by Williston.
That are all that
Okay.
We'll be in touch with them. Let them know what's going on.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I've mentioned, just so people are aware as well, that it's not just buildings, although when the demo issue comes up, this is one of our protections. When something is already recognized as historically significant, and that gives us better footing to make the argument that we want something other than demolition to happen. But like in the last meeting, we also had someone who was there to talk about the canal, and we have other historic properties and things that we want to consider that aren't necessarily just buildings and the obvious, and that's why we need a professional to help us inventory.
And they dig into the history of the building as much as they can get data.
Do they look at the current condition of the building? Is that part of it? Do they do a site inspection at all, or is it research kind of exercise?
It's pretty hands-off in a way. It's more about us being informed, but they can contextualize it too. So not just the property isolated in a bubble, but in context of the area and the other
So there's next to no involvement of property owners in the inventory process.
So they're going to be, we're looking for 100 resources within that the geographic area that was selected. Once those buildings are picked, I can imagine there'll be some outreach to those property owners. know, we haven't gotten that far yet.
There's first identifying that it's something of interest. Then you can dig in and encourage others to dig in. But firstly, it's mostly just establishing that this is something that we're paying attention to.
Is our local historic commission the sole arbiter of who gets to decide if it's an historic building, et cetera, or does it have to go through some state agency as well?
For this inventory, it's just us.
Or the designation. because-
But if you're gonna designate this particular property, it has ramifications. You're gonna prevent a demolition from some future.
This isn't like putting something on the National Register.
That's what I'm
This-
asking.
Yeah, no, this is not that level of,
But you said it could help prevent demolition of a property that you,
There is state definitions of what is significant building or structure or.
then you have to follow
That
those.
could be, yeah.
but some of the power of the commission is that we can say, this is something that we want to protect.
Okay.
And having that already pre-established is important when an issue comes up that might have conflict. If you're trying to make the argument, once the conflict happens, I think you're not on such footing.
So here's a thought, and Jess, you might know this, or Jamie, if someone wants to tear down a building, they have to come in and get a building permit. Building inspectors, commissioner is gonna know, hey, wait a minute, this is on the local historic register, whatever they call it. And then he could put a weight on it. That's how the process would work.
Very good.
Huh?
Very good.
More, no, nothing can be that simple. but-
That's the gist of it.
Well, I'm just curious, because obviously, we don't want a building torn down if we really think it should be saved.
And part of the objective is to know,
Which ones?
we don't all know what buildings there are, so, you know, trying to figure that out.
I believe part of this grant is also going to look at the Main Street Cemetery, which is, that's.
It's not just buildings.
Right. It's got some pretty Revolutionary War tombstones.
Really?
Some veterans. I love that war.
Just out of curiosity, could the CPA funds or historic funds be used to restore those tombstones?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
One of my ideas before we got into this, we had to kind of make it a little more specific to get the invite to apply was to actually look at East Street Cemetery, which I think is in worse shape than Main Street. And look at New inventory is there also.
So it isn't just building. The scope will be in your architecture or landscape, like I don't think.
Landscape could be included.
A tree that's been there for 100 years?
I'm not sure about that.
Could be something.
Could be.
Well, I don't know, there's historic trees out there.
Yeah,
People get upset when they start tearing them down.
Right, well, that's what I'm wondering, like, what is this
Probably
going
a
to
good case for it, yeah.
I'm just curious. Okay. Anything else from the committee on this?
Who would be the consultant that you would hire with the funds? Do you know yet, or do you have a sense? No, you put it out for.
Pioneer Valley Planning would help us with the application. And we got some, there's a local technical assistance hours to use to get the application going. So she would not apply.
She would not apply. Interesting.
Mass Historic has a pre-qualified list of consultants that can apply to the RFP if we're using their grant funds.
Okay, so here's where we are. I believe the agreement could be put together. The agreement has two, besides the standard agreement, two items in it, correct me if I'm wrong, that this $25,000 would be funded with the caveat that a grant would be applied and approved prior to that, and that grant would include a $12,500 reimbursement after our money's been spent to the CPA. Am I correct? So that would be in the letter of agreement. At the next meeting, we'll have that letter of agreement. We'll try to approve this, and you're going to look at whether or not there's any deadline problems with the grant application, because this can't be approved. It probably won't get approved till April or late March or something, if the timing works out. Okay?
Back beyond that.
Is there, I mean, I'm just thinking that this is the only meeting,
Pardon?
this is the only meeting we're having before the application. I I don't know about the application. Is there anything language-wise that would be helpful coming from us, like, you know, not a formal approval? I don't want to, you know, we just have the new rules and everything, not a formal approval, but that the committee indicated that, you know, this was likely to pass.
Would that help? I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to look at the application and.
I'm sure.
You say it like a letter of
I'm sure
support.
it heard.
When I read through the application, because it seems to be that some sort of commitment of funds was required.
Well, I'll take a motion to tentatively, well, to commit funds to this project pending the grant. I think that's okay to do. We're not signing off and sending it to the city council till the next meeting. But we've done that for City Space. We've done that where we're okay, so.
But then we can have that you can have that in the
You can
application.
have the minutes in
But
there.
then when they read that, they say, okay, that you didn't just go to the committee and the committee support it.
Well, what we can do is have Jamie on CPA letterhead come up with a letter, and I'll sign it that we have tentatively, well, we don't use the term tentative, I don't think. We should say we are granting funds to this proposal pending approval of the grant, or whatever. That would be. Can I have a motion to that effect?
To that effect.
Do you know what he's moving?
That just, we approve the set aside of the $25,000 for the historic inventory.
Pending grant, pending grant. Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Ed, are you and I? Ed's and I. Any opposition or abstention? Okay. So you did. Who's second?
Jay.
So that'll help. We'll get that letter. Just let me know when you're ready. I'll sign it.
So, just there's historic commission, so they'll come back the next meeting.
You still have to come back for the next meeting. We do a formal vote to send it to City Council. But because you want to find out about the grant, let's hope that this is enough for you. Because if they say, sorry, we need a council vote, we're dead in the water. So we need to find out.
They don't need the funding to be in place. Like, when the grants are awarded, you have to have funding in place. But they just need the commitment that the process is moving.
So hopefully this will be.
Sufficient, the letter.
All right. So next meeting is February what? 20th. So we'll need you here, Michael, okay?
Very good. Thank you very much.
And we'll have a funding agreement in place with CPA. We should be able to final vote on it and then send it to the city council. When it goes to the city council, you'll have to appear before the finance committee and also at the council meeting when it's finally approved to full council. Hopefully in March. Okay?
Okay, very good.
Thank you. So, Burns, you're welcome to take, and anybody else who wants to take place at the end of the table when you're. So we can. The only other thing, well, there's one thing on here, and I just want to say that I'm very happy. I want to let Greg know, he wasn't here at the meeting, but your comments were taken into consideration for the rules. We took out the dollar amounts for small projects that we were going to approve. I think one of the things you were concerned about was that dollar amount. So, I don't know if you read them over, but they're now, we're slowing the process down. 2 meetings unless something comes up that's urgent. And the application has also been changed, so I don't have anything else on that, but everybody got them and we're okay with it.
That's good.
I thought we did that the last one.
I don't know, let's go make the changes and then we'll review it and vote on it, or
Does anybody have any problem adopting these rules in the application? Can I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Andy makes a motion. Second.
I'll second.
Greg seconds. All in favor of adopting the rules in the application?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. CPA bonding. I put this on the agenda because, and I'm going to let Burns correct me if I have a problem. if I say something that's incorrect. We're coming to a head with regard to bonding for the old town hall. City space grants have deadlines that at the end of the year, if they don't have formal funding in place, and that's an actual bonding authorization, correct me when I'm wrong, appropriation in place and voted on, they may lose some of these grants. Am I correct so far? Okay. We originally said 3 million total. I'd like the committee to consider 2.5 million bond plus cash, which could be as much as $1 million. And the cash would be only available when the construction begins. So the 2.5 million, if it's sufficient, would be what we would approve now and get bonding authorization for. The cash portion of it is the flexible part of it, in that we can always come back and say, well, we have a problem, we can't fund it. But I noticed in your thoughts that you wanted the cash also approved, and I'm a little concerned about that. Is the bond authorization sufficient for you to get the approvals or to you to secure that other funding?
So the bond is sufficient, but if you have an appropriation, I reached out to Dan and Jamie to ask if we might push this forward to get this appropriation in place, with the caveat that we would have the match in place.
Before it's actually...
Right, so the commitment from the CPA is currently a promise, and essentially that's a really wonderful thing, but it's only as binding as the CPA finds it binding. So to consider this fully binding, while until we have the match, I ask that we push it forward and have this appropriation in place.
Do you have a document to show where your funding is right now?
Yes,
to hand
I
out?
do, and I can pass this out.
What I'm looking from the committee tonight is to seek your permission to go to the financial advisors to find out, A, what a bond for 2.5 million will cost. Are we listening?
No.
Whether,
Listening.
what will 2.5 million cost, what the term is, if we decide to go 10, 15, or 20 years, what the cost will be, and I need to get that information before we can make a final decision. That 2.5 million would be paid for strictly out of the funds that we get from the city taxation. It's not, the money we get in match from the state can't be used. But there's sufficient funding coming in for that. Everybody have one of these? Go ahead, you want one? There's extra copies.
Can you clarify what the bonding agency is?
I don't know yet. I will have, that's the thing, I gotta get a lot of information to the committee.
Is this a private bank? Is this
I don't know who-
public entity? Who bonds?
I don't know who uses it. We have a financial advisor that just dealt with the 50 million we borrowed for it, and we have a very good rate. And that's why the other reason to do this now is it's gonna save us money to get this rate locked in. Now, the timeline on this is, I'm gonna come back in February with information. How much is it gonna cost if we do 10 years? How much is the interest and cost if we do 15 years, if we do 20 years? And we're all gonna make that decision. And the other thing is, if we make the decision, we push it to the city council. Burns, in the meantime, and City Space has to formally apply through the application process for CPA bonding. It has to be a complete application, and there's a contract, I think Jamie mentioned, that has to be done whenever this kind of process is in. So that application comes to us, we look at it, and then the March meeting, we finalize it, make a decision. I would like everybody to digest what they say. The one thing that's up in the air is, if we give the city bonding authorization, can we wait? Maybe you know this, Michael. We can wait until we actually take the bond out. And we don't take the bond out unless the matching funds are in place, correct? Frank?
So what city council will do is give authority to the treasurer with the approval of the mayor to borrow the money. It's up to the treasurer and mayor to determine when the borrow happens. And that isn't in the city council motion. It's really kind of timing. You know, we need to borrow it now because we're going to need to spend it at some point.
But we don't wanna start paying on a bond when the construction hasn't even started.
Well, we're doing that at the high school, the middle school, but no, you don't want to.
Are
so-
we doing it for the middle school?
No, it's starting right now. I mean, we're starting building, the contract is let. So what I'm saying is, if it takes a year for you to, we do the bonding authorization, say it's done by June, and you still have a year to go before you start construction, we don't
The
want
city
to...
won't have, we would work a timetable out with the city so that the city would know when we're going to need to draw down those funds. If that's coupled with a cash appropriation, that gives it an even bigger cushion, because once we bid and we get a construction schedule, we'll also get a schedule of values, the estimated cost of construction month by month for the project. And then you look at, okay, well, it's going to be $5 million, and we're going to need $1.5 million in the first 4 months. There's just using numbers, there's $1 million in the bank already.
Because we appropriated the
Because you
cash
appropriate
element.
cash, so then the city has some flexibility as to whether they're going to put that bond together with some other bond. Because you don't have to float independent bonds. They can take 3 or 4 projects and put them together as a single bond.
Even though we give the city the right to bond, that doesn't commit interest rates or anything. Not until we officially do it do the interest rates come in.
Once the bonds are put on the market and there's a bid and the bid's accepted by the city, then that sets whatever the rate is. You wouldn't normally recommend a term, so the city council's motion wouldn't normally say 10 years or 15 years. But that recommendation obviously needs to come from the committee because you're concerned about cash flows.
Yeah. I don't see why the city council can't do that.
You'll have to work with the people here to determine whether that's doable or not.
Well, that's one of the questions I'm gonna have for bond counsel and finance advisors. But that's
Normally
important to know because,
Yeah. Normally that's kind of behind the scenes, normally.
But the CPA does have authority to dictate what the terms are.
Okay.
And the state legislature, the state law says that the bond authorization, or the
For a certain number of years.
number of years.
Because the bond's only getting paid back with CPA city-generated revenue,
Right.
so we need an understanding of what that revenue is coming in, how much of it's gonna go pay back the bond, and how much is going
Did you get that
to
document?
supplement other things, right? Yeah.
Jamie did something today which was very interesting. This one. It shows where we are with regard to local funding. And it shows you what, we just got the new 30% match guaranteed. So if you look at 2021 estimated, the bottom numbers, our local money is $445,000.
That's for that 1 year.
That's what we're expecting to take in revenue.
From the local
FY
taxation.
'21 is 445. And the conservative estimate of what we'd get a state match would be 145,000. The more optimistic would be closer to 300,000. But because the revenues have just changed, we don't know exactly what we're going to be getting. It's hard to guesstimate, but
Well, this will come into play when we decide what term we want. That's why it's pretty.
Right, but it's gonna, I mean, it's hard to project what 10 years of revenue are going to be. Like, we don't have those projections, right?
You know, but we have historic projections, historic of what we've got.
Information, right?
And there's risk. I mean, the mayor brought up, what if they decide to take the 30% match away? Let's, God help us if they decide to do that. It took us 20 years to get it from 10% up to 30.
I don't think we would secure a bond with any of the state match.
we cannot.
We can't.
So that's not a real risk.
And we could prove.
But it factors into how much, what percentage of the money that we
left.
allocate, right? Like, we wouldn't want to do it, I mean, the state match, like our thinking of what the state match can contribute to what we can do on other projects.
Right, yeah, that's the point.
So,
How much do we want to put on the table?
right, I mean, like, we don't want to do,
Like if we split it halvesies, then,
Right.
then that other half would be used for other CPA purposes.
Just to make it clear, though, it's important to me anyway, and I think the committee, we're not going to authorize, this bond will have a contract that says it's not to be taken out until City Space's matching funds are in place. And we can determine how much that is, because Vern brought up, there's two elements of your funding. One is, and I want you to explain this, that there's construction money and then there's money for equipping the building. We may be able to build the building, do the renovation with less than $6.6 million.
That's it. And that includes endowment, it includes programming for the next several years, as well as theater equipment and some of the equipment that you can take away from the space essentially.
So we may be able to build construction with like $5 million or something less than that. And that's important to know, because what we have to determine is what would be that match that allows this construction to begin. In other words, if we decide 3.5 million is our maximum, you have to get to at least 5 million in available funding, or whatever figure we come up with, before we'll appropriate the cash and allow the bond to happen. I think that has to be in place in our contract this year before we move forward with this. Is that something that'll work for City Space? I mean, can you figure out what's the minimum dollar amount you need to begin construction?
We have construction estimates. We're actually back in conversations with the architect and their cost estimator about a couple of things that came up in our application for tax credits, as well as a couple of small changes that the board voted on. So we're working back with Goodwill on it, and we should be able to tighten up the number. We think it's 5.2 if we're able to go out to bid in 2022 or the end
Whatever it is.
the end of middle of 21, based on inflation, but those are estimated inflation that was developed 10 months ago. So we're going to have, I think, a little bit of tighter number. We also want to try to break it down in a way that clarifies the eligible work that CPA money can pay for. Because we can't use CPA money for the endowment, the non-physical things. We also can't use it to equip the building. Because it's not improving the purpose of the historic structure. So we need to break that out in a different way than our current estimate shows.
But we're a lot more, I was talking with Jamie about this today. I'm very optimistic because, for instance, there was a thought that the ADA requirements, such as the elevator, might not apply. According to the language, it does. And I think, I'm optimistic. What we're getting at for the committee's understanding is we're only supposed to pay for historic elements in this renovation, but making the building, making the space available for the community to function as it did historically, as a community space, is wide open in what they'll allow. So we're only, let's say we commit to 3.5 million. The whole project is 5 million. I think we're safe. But I think we do need that. So I don't know if it's doable, but by the February meeting in the application, that kind of thing, or maybe you need 2 months to get that, but at least the bottom line budget, you said 5.2 million.
I think we could have the overall amount, the break it down, we'll have a little more time, or our architect will have a little more time to break it out. We're doing that
Well, we could
also
do
with
that.
our historic tax credits, where in our, in April will be applying for the third time. We had feedback on our last round, and we have to do that as part of that application. So that'll work for this as well.
Do you have like a construction draw schedule at all? Not yet, because I'm hearing what he's kind of looking for is like, how much are you going to need in certain chunks at certain times, and to have a construction draw schedule that sort of identifies, but I don't know how easy it's going to be
We
to
really
do
need a
that.
contractor to be able to give us usable numbers.
Okay.
But the 5.2 million you're bringing up, I think, is reasonable to what you think you'll need. Because the architect did an estimate of the construction and can give you, just like we do with any architecture, what the costs are estimated to be. And they'll probably have to put some inflation into it. But that's what we'll use for the match. In other words, if we decide 3.5 million, that the other money up to 5.2, whatever that figure is, has to be in place before the bonding can be finalized. Now, we're going to get authorization to bond, but the treasurer will know that the CPA has that restriction. Can't be taken out until you're ready. And the appropriation, this is the question I have. The appropriation, if we decide to go to $1 million, and I say that because we've been putting money aside every year. 200, we're up to 400. Maybe we'll be up to 6, maybe 8, maybe we want to give a little more. But that we can decide at the time of construction. I want to make sure that's okay, because I'm hearing maybe that you need more funding than just the bond authorization for the grants and everything.
Well, a question for you, is that funding you're putting aside is for general and historic, am I correct?
Well, we've earmarked it. There's not to say that this committee can't change their minds. But
Right, I mean, I guess that's what it means, is that if we can say that, and that's really great and wonderful that we have that in place, but it's not binding. So when I go out to a funder, potential funder, and I say, we have this in place, and they say, that's great, you get the appropriation, and we have a commitment letter.
Well,
it's
is it
not
that,
quite binding.
are you saying you need that, or is the 2.5 million bond? We're going to get that approved by city council. Is that not enough? That's what I'm asking. I could be convinced, but I'm a little hesitant to put the other money on the table.
What is the difference of putting that appropriation in place and not for the
Well,
1 million?
we only have 400,000 currently in place. We could do, I guess we go to 6, because in 2021, our budget, we would maybe add some more to it. Michael?
Just, not in the discussion you just had with Burns, but from a construction perspective, we won't be able to sign a contract on a promise that there might be a cash appropriation. Just so you have a sense of it. So.
But you won't be able to do a contract if you don't have the rest of your funding in place either.
Well, exactly, but if the CPA portion of the funding exceeds the authorized bond, so let's say it's a $5 million bid, and the CPA is going to cover 3 of that, which is a little less than half the total project. If you don't have 3 in place, we can't count 3 against available to sign the contract.
So, 2.5 million bond, $500,000 cash. This spring. That's what you're doing. Put in the application, everybody, this is just, I'm sending this out to you so you get to absorb it. I gotta find out a lot of information from bond counsel on whether or not, what this is gonna cost us. We already have 400,000 in place, so another 100 if we can do that. I'm not ready to go the other 500. I'd like to do that personally. I think this project's not going to get done unless CPA commits more money. But we're already at 3 million. We've talked about that in the past.
So can I just ask, I just need some history here. So the 400 that's been earmarked, there was an application that came to the committee and you voted no. It's just been a verbal.
That was the same thing she said. We committed to $3 million. But again, it's just a pledge.
With no application and.
No, this
Okay.
is the formal application process right now we're talking.
Okay.
And that 400,000 is just a number moved over to the side. There's nothing that's binding that, like basically just
There's
in
no
the
minutes,
accounting
there's no
of it.
vote, there's
Right.
no.
Two-
There was a vote to put it aside, but there's not a vote to say where we're going to spend it.
200,000 was appropriated as part of the FY18 budget, and that was moved into the CPA reserve for historic resources. So that 200,000 can only be used for a historic project. The other 200,000 was
Undesignated
just
fund.
moved, was just earmarked, like you said, just moved over. It's in our accounting, but it's not. there was no appropriations, there's no city council action. So that could be,
It's a reversible set aside, right?
yeah, and that was the point of it.
Well,
There
both
was-
of them could be used.
There was discussion
Yeah,
at
we
the
know
time
about it.
about not trying to, about having flexibility for the committee.
In case the project fell through.
Yeah.
Dan, when you were talking about coming up with numbers for like, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, who's doing that again? That's the,
I talked to the mayor, the city has financial advisors, bond counsel, a financial advisor that helps us with bonding.
so
I don't know, to answer Greg's, who that is, and I'll find out as much as I can about it.
So I don't know if it's them doing that or more likely, I mean, because Jamie, this is great, really, like this is the other side of this, right? Like, but I think what we really need for the next meeting in order to understand the impact is those numbers together, really combined with a projection of like an estimate of, okay, for the next 10 years, what, like historically, how much money have we allocated?
We need a projection.
What would that mean for, okay, so if a 10-year bond is taking this much out, we're getting, yearly this much in, what is that gonna leave us with at the end of the day, under scenario A, a 10-year bond, and then under scenario B, a 15-year, you know what I mean? Like to
You
understand,
also have to
because that's really what it's.
You gotta take in consideration the increase in the housing assessments as well, because that's
Right.
where our goal is. So if housing assessments continue to increase, as we've recently seen, then there'd be more money coming in locally.
So I don't know how that gets done, if that, I mean, Jamie, I know
Well, all we can do is give you data on what we've done for the last 10 years, since the thing was done. How much we've spent in each area, is that what you need? And how much we came in for...
He wants to see what's cash going to be left depending on what we bond.
Right, but
So-
all we can do is the
I know it'd be
projection.
an estimate, but it's our projection, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, okay.
What I can, every year, the guidance that I've gotten is that the amount of revenue that the CPA takes in every year increases by about 3% every year, because that's or 2.5%.
We're talking about the city side of it?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a fair thing.
Exactly, so that's what we're limited to, that's what the city grows at, that's what our tax base grows at, so that's what the CPA revenue grows at.
You could do a 10-year projection.
So it's easy.
Take this 445 and project it forward. Okay, is that what you're looking at, Scott?
Well, the 445 and a projected I mean, not for the bonding part, but for our understanding, like
I don't think we can do that because the state, for the state side you're talking about in projection, in terms of how much money we're getting back from them?
yeah. Because I think, here's the thing, right? We, like, if under a 10-year bond, it's gonna be 100% of our fund, we're not gonna do that. But if we're like, okay, we think that we're gonna have the state match, that might be more in the and it's not gonna be 100%. You see what I'm saying? Like we need to do this in a way that
Well, the
allows us
state
to
match-
also fund other
The
projects.
state match is, right now, if I'm correct, it's at minimum 30% match of what we take in.
Yeah.
So if we project 10 years, let's say, Jamie doing the math of 445 she has here, times 2.5% every year compounded, and then the 30% match of that compounded, you'll know every year that's what you're taking in.
Right.
Now, what's not being discussed is what we have in the bank. We have we have 1.2 million in the
Yeah.
bank. We're going to take maybe 6, 8 out of that, but still, that plus all of this, I think we can do that. We can give you those figures. Is that possible?
I mean, it's arithmetic, but it's.
I understand what you're saying.
I have to do the FY '21 budget for the next meeting, so I'll be looking at this anyways, it's not that much further to extrapolate out, but it's gonna be really rough.
Even if we set aside $200,000 a year, isn't that 10 years?
Well, no, we got to put that money up before
No, but when we pay it off in 2 years.
Yes. But here's the thing. I'm looking at 15 years, even 20 years, because I know it's a lot more interest, but it doesn't take as much per year away from other projects.
Right.
So I wanted those figures so you can make that decision. If a 15-year bond is only $150,000 a year, That gives us a lot more money available for other projects. And that's where,
That's what I'm, yeah,
that's what I want the bond council to give us, you know, is this possible? Now, Melissa, when she gave us the figures, she hates paying interest. It's not a bad idea, not paying interest. But I always say to myself, yeah, but if I have a monthly income and I'm borrowing 30-year loan on a mortgage on the house because I really want the house, I'm willing to absorb more interest so that I can afford it. So that's the question. This is different. This is millions of dollars. I mean, over 10 years, how much does 2.5 million cost us? How much does 2.5 million cost over 15 years? I'd like us to have all that data.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I mean, I just to be devil's advocate for a second here. The committee has already set aside $200,000 in the past 2 fiscal years with a projection, with an understanding that we're going to be increasing at least 3% in our revenue. So I see your point and I get it, but I'm kind of in the camp, I'd rather just pay it off if we could. I don't want to spend everything out, but at the same time, you've already set this kind of bar of $200,000 and we're okay,
Whatever
right?
works out.
Well, and I totally agree.
That was also part of the thinking, was that the CPA can function these past couple of years with putting aside $200,000, and that's what it might feel like to the committee to have that much less.
There you go.
Well, we can back into a bond that has 200,000 approximately. You know, we can actually find out what that would, like a fixed payment of $200,000 a year.
That's
at a certain
important.
interest rate.
I would like to
You know,
see.
if we
yeah.
got the
That's
data.
another way to look at it.
So.
I would-
That's,
We
Greg,
can
I'm
find
so
that
happy you
out
said that. A bond council will allow us to say, all right, we want to do a $200,000 fixed, even though they,
Fixed payment.
fixed payment, that's allowed?
Well, they're all, I don't know who the bonding agency is, so I can't speak for them. In the private banking sector, anything, you can structure things any way you want to, right? So you can
Well,
have,
that's
you can have a
important
fixed
too.
payment that has, you know, principal and interest, just like your mortgage. And over time, your interest portion goes down and your principal payment goes up. And I think we can structure it so it's a fixed payment that way. There are drawdown bonds and drawdown loans. So during the drawdown period, you would be taking money out as you need it. And then you do that over a certain period of time until you've fully drawn the bond. And then that is when your 10-year period or your 15-year period begins. And you make payments annually after that. So you're not making principal and interest payments at all during or you're making interest payments during your drawdown period, but no principal payments. So let's say your drawdown period is 1 year, 2 years, you know, I don't even know how long the construction would be, but you're pulling money out maybe, you know, a few $100,000 at a time, so you're not paying as much interest.
Right.
Right?
We could
So
use
that's
the
one way to
Just because
structure
you
it.
don't want to be pulling, you know, if we're doing a $2.5 million bond, the last thing you want is to pull $2.5 million out on
Right
day
on.
one
Right.
and have it sit and be paying interest on that for the next 18 months because you didn't really
And
need
that's
it.
typical, isn't it, Mike, for like the high school? We only
So-
took out what we needed, right?
No.
Oh, no, we-
Typical is what just happened for the new school. We need 55 or 60 million, they borrowed 50 million. Payment started on a $50 million bond before the contract was signed, but that's typical. That's normally the way it goes. What Greg's talking about, we, in the municipal side, it's borrowing in anticipation. And so you run short-term borrow, you pay the interest on that short-term borrow. When you know what your total number is, you bond that number. So let's say it's $2.5 million. So we need, you know, $500,000 in the first 6 months. They'll do a short-term borrow for $500,000. Roll that over, add another 6 to it. Oh, project's finished. We totally borrowed $2.5 million in 18 months. Now we're gonna put a permanent bond in place for whatever the term is, and pay principal and interest after that. So it's a little, it's called a different thing in the public sector, but it's very.
It's almost like a construction
it
loan and a
accomplishes-
perm loan.
It accomplishes
Yeah.
the same sort of thing.
Sure.
That's kind of stuff that's entirely up to the executive branch from the perspective of, again, I don't know how deep CPA committee authority goes as to directing the executive as to how to do that.
I believe the law says we can.
Well, could very well
Because
be.
we are the appropriating authority for CPA funds with the council approval. the executive has to
But
follow
you're
through
not-
with.
but you're not a bonding.
No,
Not
but
a
I
bonding
mean,
agent, so I don't know, and I will defer this to Jamie and anyone else who has more information. I don't know how, it sounds like you can certainly say we want to go for 15 years or 20 years. I don't know if you can direct the Treasury to say, and we want you to do a ban instead of borrowing the money for the entire construction period and then go out and do the full borrow. I don't know that you have that authority.
Can we, is there a way to have it so that you expend any of your funds, like you would expend the cash first before we hit the bond, or we expend any of your grant money first, so it's like...
Normal, it's going to be up to how the city wants to structure it. In the past, we have paid the bills and sought reimbursement.
for other construction?
Until there was, well,
Or
for
for-
any of the other monies that we've given city space.
City space, right.
That's not the way that the town hall first floor renovation went, because that was a city project. So I don't know, I don't know that we've gotten clear whether this is a city project and city space is tagging along, or whether it's a city space project and the city's tagging along. I don't know that.
And I say, I can answer that. The mayor says this is a city space project.
Then I
Well,
guess.
it is, in my mind too.
Well, no, that's fine. Then I'm guessing, in that case, that it would be the same sort of style that we've done, that we would pay a bill, we would submit the bill to the city would reimburse us for that.
But if you have a $500,000 bill, you have to have some cash in place.
Well, we're gonna need cash match. I mean, we're
Well,
gonna,
you're gonna have your match too, your cash match plus maybe our cash, and then the bonding could come into play to
my guess
reimburse.
is you're gonna say something to the effect, the city space can have this money once they've got enough cash in the bank to do the
Right.
project.
Exactly.
And so the piece of cash that we're gonna have in the bank ought to be, I'm certain it's gonna be more than a month's worth of construction.
So in other words, and then once you do that, you get the
So we pay
reimbursement.
200 grand, we send a copy of the invoice to Jamie processes the reimbursement for 200 grand, or however it's gonna be structured. That goes back in our bank, we get to pay the next bill. Now, that's gonna take probably longer than bill to bill, so we're gonna need to
You have some
look at our cash
buffer
flow,
cash.
make sure that we've got enough in the bank to allow for that in the worst case. So the worst construction month, we want to be able to double that, have that available as liquid. So most of our money that we've raised now is tied up in CDs, but they're all going to retire, and we'll liquidate them as need be, depending upon what we understand the process is once you're all done and the city council's made a decision. Maybe we'll extend them, because that's really the only place we can get any reasonable money. We're getting 2% on CDs, and I'd like to keep making that until I have to have the cash.
Okay, well, here's what I want to do. I'm going to try and get the financial advisor here, so we can ask and get definitive questions. I'm going to meet with them to find out what 2.5. I'm leaning towards 10 years, but I wanted you to have the figures on what 15 is. I like the notion of structuring it so we know every year it's going to be $200,000. That's nice. What else?
You're probably looking at about $330,000 or $40,000 initial year payment.
For 10 years?
I've
That's
got
what I
a
was
bond
worried about.
calculator that I'll send to Jamie. He can guess an interest rate and plug in numbers and get annual payments.
Well, I want to get it from them because if it's
No,
$350,000 the first year, that's high for me, considering we only have $445 coming in. So let's get all the figures. Jesse's smiling funny.
The good news is that interest rates are very low right now.
And our bond rating is like AAA, quadruple A or something. It's fantastic.
Right. And so there also is, I just want to put this out here, I think we're probably as a municipality in the habit of borrowing public debt, which would be tax exempt for the buyer. So, if we're a public municipality in Massachusetts, we're selling debt essentially, and they're buyers of that debt, and they get it tax.
Tax-free.
They get a tax-free rate. So typically you get a slightly lower interest rate on tax-exempt bonds.
I don't know. I should know
However,
that,
in
but I
this
don't.
low interest rate environment, the distance between tax-exempt bonds and private bonds is very small. And so there might be slightly higher interest rate, but not that much. So if you go to the private markets for bond or debt, they can structure it in a way that it would be a drawdown. You wouldn't necessarily have the inflexibility of dealing with the tax-exempt financing agency in Massachusetts, where you have to take huge chunks at a time that you end up sitting on and paying interest on. So there may be an evaluation of, okay, it might be, some basis points higher, but we're making that up because we're not paying interest on money that's not being used, if that makes sense.
It does, Greg. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm not going to be in the room when the bonding decisions are made, so. I don't know who the bonding agents are and how that sausage gets made, and I doubt I'm going to be ultimately a decision maker in that room for that. But I just want to put that out there that there are these other markets, and we are not, just because we are a municipality, we are not required to go to the tax-exempt bond market for our debt. Private banks will lend to us.
Well, I don't.
They might be able to structure something.
Here's what I want
as
to
well.
do.
So that's just something to think about. If we think we're just going to the, mass development for our bond, we may want to get a bid in the private markets just to see what it looks like.
So what I'm going to do, first of all, is this committee okay with 2.5 million plus 500,000? I want to give Burns what your feeling is, because that's the application she's going to do to City Space. 2.5 million bonded and 500,000 cash for now. If we can, or if we need to, maybe we give 500 more later on. That's my thinking. Does the committee want to vote on me? This is another promise, but that's what she's going to apply for that. I'm going to get information, so we don't really need a vote, but that's what she's going to apply for, unless somebody objects to that.
She's just applying for the millions. The committee determines how it will,
There you go.
what the split is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
3 million.
I mean, if it's 2.5, your application should just be for the dollar amount.
Not where it comes from.
You're not asking for bonding or
That's
cash,
correct.
but it's a committee makes the recommendation to council, looking at it, when it comes time, we have $1 million in the bank and we want to do $1 million cash and $2 million bonding.
Yeah, we'll decide what we want to do.
Is there any difference in a $3 million application and $200,000 application? Or is the same application, just an application?
That's the same.
There's a new application form.
No, thank you.
But I think you should meet with Jamie right away and get all that information, because there's also, if we vote on it, I think the first thing we'll do is get the application and debate everything at the next meeting, and then the March meeting we'll make a final decision as to what we want to do moving forward. At the next meeting, we'll come up with language for an agreement, this bond won't be released until funding's in place, etc. I'm going to try and get information. JB's going to try and do that spreadsheet on projected monies coming in, which is a good idea. I'll get information on 10, 15, even 20-year bond. I don't want to do 20, that's a lot of interest, but we might as well have the information in place. What else? I think it's important, this document you presented shows where you are right now. I will try to get bond counsel here, or at least somebody that has a lot of information. I don't want to be the one to present information. I'm not quite as eloquent with numbers as Greg is. with regard to the accounting of bonding, so if I can get somebody from the city here for the next meeting, whether it's the financial advisor, I will do so. But I will try to meet with that group to find out what we need to do and how much it's going to cost. Is that all right? Everybody okay with that? This is, we're not formalizing anything. We're just moving forward from here. So Burns and City Space knows what to do. But we kind of have to, just the bottom line is, in order for them to secure their other funding, we need to have some kind of an actual appropriation, bond authorization plus cash, whatever that is, from City Council. From us, then the City Council.
What on this list is tied to a deadline? And what's the deadline for that?
It is, the commitment for it is the end of this year.
End of this year?
How much do they need committed? Do they just need a 50/50 match to it?
Yeah, so we have to match it 50/50. But we also have a timeline on construction for that grant.
So-
So that onus is on us.
So for us, it's less risky because none of this money is going to be doled out until their money's in place, until construction begins. Even though we're giving bond authorization, even though, like any other project, we might give the money, put it in the bank, but if all the other funding isn't in place, it doesn't happen. So,
And also, it's also a timeline factor. We don't have all the money in place, but, we are working to get it in place. And once we have it in place, come back to this table, start this process, would take additional months, and then we would be behind schedule. So it will eliminate that and move forward with.
and just to repeat what you said, if you can tell a potential donor, hey, we got approval for $3 million from the City Council, from the CPA, that may open some pockets, some wallets.
Absolutely. It makes a big difference. And there's a similar project, a much larger project actually in Needham, which we have the CPA funding and bond and those large amount. Do you remember when I was at 14? It's a big project. So there are other projects out there that we can look towards and find information, and we're doing our diligence on that side too. So we can just bring that to you. And like I said, hopefully we can have that breakdown. I know we'll have it for April 30th application to the historic tax credits of the historic side, but potentially we can have that somewhere.
Well, I'm looking, I know we're talking about what part of this can be funded by CPA.
Right.
How much of the elements, and I think, Michael, you said the architect could help you with that. Take a couple of months though, right?
Right, that's what we're working on through that historic tax.
So if we can get that done by the March meeting, February
We'll
meeting,
try.
we'll work on it.
So you haven't had any tax credits committed yet, right? Bring back?
We have not. No, we'll be going in our third application.
Okay.
The most recent application took a while to get back to us and had extensive questions on it. More drawing, more information about certain elements of mistakes, which has allowed us to really, like I said, go back to the architect and,
All right there?
and look at the drawings, especially the back staircase, and fix some of the areas that we knew that were an issue as far as just some changes to the plans that after a little bit of time, we're like, maybe we should change that. Sure.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So just to, from a cost administration standpoint, I know we touched on this earlier, in order to manage the CPA funds on a cost reimbursement basis, we plan to have funds in the bank to spend on construction. I'm still a little unclear.
Yeah, I'm guessing on-
Those are coming from these other sources? I mean, I would say we would.
That's what Mike said, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think.
I almost was thinking, we'll give, we'll front the 500,000 that you're looking for so you can have that, but we can't even do that. That has to be reimbursed
That has
reimbursed
to be
too,
part,
so.
that has to be part of
So you
matching
think you
grant.
can get the liquidity that you need in order to front the costs so that we can reimburse you?
Yeah,
Is that
we've
right?
got about 300,000 or so on hand now for that project. And we've got this year to do some more fundraising. We've got a couple of fairly significant promises.
We have pledges that, you know, our funders have over years, we want to give a sizable sum each year, like 7 cents for their budgets.
And we're gonna be, use the term beating the bushes for more donations this year. So a significant portion of it's gotta come from the private sector, and that's what we're spending. We spent the last 8 or 9 months on, and we're going to spend the next 10 or 12 months on.
I'm thinking that, best case scenario, those dollars are not the first dollars that you have them, but you're gonna wanna maintain that cushion in order to spend and then be reimbursed. So, so we need to get, I just want, you guys sound like you're on it, so.
And some of that funding, just to be transparent about our budget, goes towards the capital campaign itself. We do have to spend money to make
I think the other thing I want to tell you is, I don't know how we're working with Burns, but fortunately, for some reason, Ed Markey and Richie Neal were at the inauguration, and boy, did I hit them up for the CPA funding for this project. And I just want to say, the best time to talk to legislators who happen to have the power, like Richie Neal is the chairman of House Ways and Means, to get earmarks, is when they're running for office. So I wrote a nice letter, Burns gave me information. I'm actually going to see Ed Markey tomorrow. I won't mention it again. Huh?
Give us through letter.
Well, let's just mail that. I don't know if I'm going to get opportunity. He's talking about Puerto Rico. So anyway, I just want you to know I'm beating the bushes because this is a project dear to my heart. So being a theater person, as Ed knows, check, I want to see this happen. So hopefully before, never mind.
That's, half of us feel that way.
This is really, this is a group effort, with the city as a whole, and the city space, our team of volunteer, and we've been working really hard, and people have come to the plate that we did not expect, and so it's just been, this tremendous effort, and I feel reinvigorated, each and every month, and we put hours into this work, and we love doing it, and we thank you for your support. It's really important.
Thank you. Even the new members on board with this. See?
So far.
All right. So I don't have.
There's no vote.
Well, there will be soon. So we're going to meet the third Thursday of every month.
Yeah,
Scott.
so, just speaking of the date, I'm not sure if it affects anybody else. It's during school vacation. I will.
The 16th?
The 7th, was it the 20th?
20th.
The 20th. I know, because
Don't
that,
go anywhere, you guys.
unfortunately, I won't be there, because I'll be away during that time.
Who else?
So I'm not
Who
sure
else
if that
won't be
affects anybody
here?
else.
Who else won't be here besides Scott?
I plan to be here, but I have a major grant application due that day.
I'm
Don't
celebrating.
procrastinate.
So I'm not procrastinating.
So yeah.
So we'll keep it the 20th, but if you know way ahead of time that you can't make it, let us know, because this is really important. We're
I know I can,
nitty-gritty.
and that's why I bring it up.
All right, fine. I don't think I want
apologize.
to. If I can get seven members, would be great. But okay. Deadline for grant applications Thursday, February 6th. If anybody knows of anybody, a lot of you are on other committees like conservation, historic. Make sure they know our new rules, okay, of getting grant applications in well ahead of time. I'll take a rule. Oh yeah, did you get voted back?
I did, yeah.
All right. Harry, are you voted back in as the planning board member for our committee? I don't need it. I don't need it. I believe you. You did not. All right. Move to adjourn, somebody?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much.